This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome, everybody out there listening to KLEAN Radio on our flagship station, 790 KABC, somewhere in the middle of the XM dial, XM channel 243. Also, KLEANradio.com. That's clean with a K. Welcome, everybody out there. I'm in the studio tonight with my co-host with the most, the great Andrew Spanswick.
Oh, good evening, Judah. How are you?
I'm really good. We actually had a really fun week, this past week, playing hooky one day, you and I.
That's right. We actually went to the movies.
Yeah, we went
Saw
to
the
movies.
worst movie ever.
We went to the movies so early, they didn't even give you reserved seating yet.
Yeah, they just gave up on that. They're like, you're the only two idiots that would be here at this time.
I don't even want to mention the name of the movie because it was that bad.
It was bad.
And we were over to Friday
But you know
night.
what? We stayed because it was cool.
Yeah,
it was air conditioning.
That's what. That's actually sort of true. But we'd like to welcome everybody out there listening to KLEAN Radio. We're a show about addiction and recovery. Andrew's been in the business for a long, long time, helping a lot of people.
Making me sound old.
Sometimes, you were the Doogie Howser of the drug treatment world.
Great.
You actually got into it when you were about 9.
That's right, yeah.
And, so I'd like to welcome everybody out there. And I want to wish a good friend of mine, this woman named Lisa S., happy 2 years. She has 2 years sober today.
Congratulations, Lisa.
We met, you met her at a party we were at last night, and she's a pretty awesome lady. And to people out there that are listening, 2 years ago she contacted me on Facebook and she said, I need help.
Right.
And she basically said, if I don't do this right now, I know I'm not going to do it. And she was probably a little tipsy when she wrote it, but she knew that message would go through and I'd find it.
It's that brief window of opportunity.
Exactly. And that if you're lucky enough, blessed enough, if the universe gives you that brief moment, grab onto it. And happy 2 years. And she was saying one of the things she loved, because she's been coming to parties with us for the past 2 years, she goes, you guys gave me hope because you guys aren't glum. I'm like, you don't know us that well, but...
Well, now she's asking me about investment advice on mutual funds and stocks. But that's a little different than spending your money on drugs, okay?
And we weren't a glum lot to her, and we gave her hope. And I think a lot of times people out there, they think this sobriety thing, they think it's going to be this boring thing where you're going to, just live a life of a boring person, and it's not true.
I think it's a fear for a lot of people, especially if you originally got into using because you were going out with friends and drinking and using drugs, and then that's your only way of coping socially, and you just don't know if you can do socialize without it. The other thing is when you are an addict or you've been using or at least abusing drugs and alcohol, all your friends generally do that too, because if they don't, you don't hang out with them.
Right.
Plus, nobody else will stay up with you till 4 in the morning.
Right. You either have friends when you're using that are all using, or you have no friends.
Or you have no friends, yeah.
Yeah. So if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. We have a great show tonight. In the studio tonight, we have an amazing interventionist. She came all the way from Kansas City, Kansas, and I'm joking. And her name is Angela Pugh. And,
wait, which part were you joking
which
about?
part were you
Kansas
doing?
City, Kansas.
Right? She was great, or
Actually, listen, I have to clear this up because state line goes directly through the middle of Kansas City. So there is Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. And I actually get asked that all the time.
So you're from Kansas City?
State line is 4 blocks from my house. So,
wow, so
I am both.
She's both.
She's bi.
Which is it? Where's the gas cheaper? Which side?
It is my version of global.
Global. That's your global.
And one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight, because Angela is an amazing interventionist, like I said. People often don't know, and because we're in the industry, we think everybody knows how to help people. That everybody knows that there's 12-step meetings. And so many people don't. I was talking to a guy in our treatment center today who had no idea about any rehabs.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people actually that are out there that have problems with drugs and alcohol that don't really understand the industry. And we always sort of take it for granted that, there's rehabs and there's sober livings and there's interventionists and there's all these types of care out there and ways to get help. But, it's just been a little bit of improvement with shows like Intervention, I guess.
And hopefully us.
Yeah, and then there's been, shows like Celebrity Rehab, which don't really show accurately what happens in a rehab. So, but there's at least people are talking about it, and it gives us an opportunity to come on and educate people a little bit better about the positive aspects of what can happen in residential rehab and how interventionists work and how people can get help for themselves or their family members.
So one of the things tonight I want to talk about is how do you confront a friend or a loved one that has a drug problem? And give us a call because we want your ideas how to do it. We're going to ask Angela. I'm going to ask Andrew. But I want to know, how do you...
And also, if someone needs some help, if they've got a family member they want to talk about,
because it's terrifying. I mean, you know, everybody's biggest fear is sometimes that you're going to push somebody away. Like, if I help you, I'm going to push you away. Let me give out the number. It's 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. I think a lot of people's biggest fear is that they're going to push somebody away if they say, hey, I want you to get help now.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, there's a lot of fears, and a lot of it also is lack of understanding. I mean, you know, I've been working in the industry for 22 years. I have a background in mental health. You know, I understand these problems. I'm used to talking to people that have mental health problems or substance abuse problems. But if it's a family member, one, you might not have a background to understand what's going on exactly. And number two, you have a relationship with that person that's full of all sorts of for lack of a better term, you know, intertwined relationships. There's enmeshments and ideas and beliefs and, you know, codependence and, you know, clinically we would say transference and countertransference within the family mechanism in the unit. And so it's very difficult often for family members to get past the anger and the sort of just basic issues of communication that have built up over time, especially when somebody's been abusing and the other person's been blaming and whatever. But, you know, we should talk about that with our interventionists because that's what interventionists are great at. You know, maybe just a brief description of what you do as an interventionist, what an interventionist is. That would be great to start.
Well, I'll tell you, it's, I mean, there are a couple of different styles of intervention, obviously, and I think most people know what they see on the television show and the surprise. And I know you had one of my colleagues, Louise Stanger, on a while back, and she's invitational. And you really kind of, for me, I'm more go with the flow, feel out the situation. I kind of do a little bit of both a lot of the time. But I get a lot of those calls about, I have a person, you know, whether it's the spouse or the sibling, the parent, you know, from whatever person is reaching out. I think a lot of what I see, too, in those barriers are just basic communication errors too, you know, and a piece of that really is human nature and just in how we communicate with one another and what we say and how we speak, and you get wrapped up in all of that baggage and that, just like you're talking about with, you know, all of the fears and, and the past hurt
it's amazing
and
how
anger.
It's amazing how, like, even I notice in like my own personal relationships and with friends and family and stuff, and I'll say something to someone 10 times and they won't be able to hear it, and then some random stranger says it and they're like, oh, I never thought about that. And it's like, what have I been saying?
It's funny
for, like,
because you've had me call
2-3
friends of
weeks.
yours and say, hey, Judah, can you call my friend up and talk to him? And you're, you know, you're a professional, but sometimes professionals need to take a step back, or family members need to take a step back and hire somebody like Angela, who, you know, is sort of an arbiter.
Well, it's harder to sort of get over on someone that's a stranger, and you're not, you know, like repeating the patterns of how an addict will fool someone into manipulating the situation to get what they want. Because someone that's addicted, really, that's what they're trying to do. They're in pain. Basically, they just want to use. They want to be left alone. Even if they want help, it's like it's still difficult to like deal with. The shame and other things that they might be feeling, and what the fear of getting sober, which is very common as well. So, you know, having someone coming in that's professional and that understands that can help guide not just the patient into treatment, but also deal with the family, because really alcoholism and drug addiction has a large family component to it. You know, one from a side of education, educating people about, you know, what addiction is and how it works, and then the other part is largely about, you know, what do people do? How do they deal with an addict? How, you know, what's a great response? You know, should we kick them out of the house? Like,
I spend a lot of time on that family education piece too, because you also deal with groups of people that really don't have any knowledge about addiction, period. All they know is their person and what they see, you know, and
and they think it's unique. They think it's
educational.
What I'm always amazed is how everybody thinks it's unique to their
like
individual
it's only going
person,
on in their house. Right.
Well, that's because it's such a shameful thing that how people perceive addiction. that...
And not just addiction, but mental health as well. You know,
but
like,
I think it's baffling, too, and that's something that I focus a lot on. Like, you know, I was pretty baffled by my own behavior. Like, I can't imagine how an outsider felt about it, you know? Somebody that doesn't have any addiction issues whatsoever, I'm sure it's confusing. I was confused, you know? Yeah. So, and it's also kind of recognizing, too, I always say in my recovery that I've kind of separated my addicted person from who I am, because the things I did in my active addiction are not things I would ever do in my sober mind. Right. You know, those aren't choices that I would make or actions that I would take. So I have to separate that. And I work with the family a lot on that too, that it's not necessarily the person that you have all this anger and hurt for. It really is that addiction. And that is a separate entity from your person.
Right. Do you ever get from people in the 12-step world, oh, this is hogwash, you know, who needs an interventionist? Shove them in a meeting and they'll get sober. A little bit. However, I think there is something so important that a professional person with that knowledge and experience, there's just a completely different dynamic that a professional person can bring into that room. And I can accomplish things with your family members that you would never be able to accomplish because I don't have that attachment. You know, I am completely objective. I also don't mind being yelled at and called names. I'm not going to react to any of those things where the family members are going to have a tendency to get upset about that stuff, you know.
And you can't be manipulated the same way.
I can't be manipulated the same way. Also, you know, there's a certain piece of human nature in that, too, that people are going to naturally be on a little better behavior when there's a stranger in the room.
Judah, why don't you give up the number one more time?
By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call here at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We're discussing tonight confronting a friend or a loved one with a drug problem, or if you're going through that right now, give us a call. Again, the number is 800-222-5222. We'd love to hear from you. We have an amazing interventionist in the studio tonight, Angela Pugh from Kansas City in the middle. And
you know, the other thing that I think is interesting is like people that are the addict that want intervention, but nobody does it for them.
Right.
Right. Like, you know, if you ever had an individual call you and say, you're an interventionist, how do I get help?
I do get that. I definitely get that. Or I get the person that's kind of on the other side and they go, I'm so mad my family didn't do an intervention on me. I can't believe they didn't do an intervention.
And feel entitled to an intervention.
Right. Like they so should have had one. I was like, I would have done it if you would have called, I promise.
Well, one of the things I want to also talk about is a lot, you know, people have this tendency during these interventions or when they want to help people, they blame and they criticize them, you know, because the anger starts to come out. And that's one of the worst things you could absolutely do when trying to help somebody is get angry.
Do you think interventions have been glamorized by like the show Intervention? I mean, do you think like people like we're talking about people like actually want to have an intervention and they're like pissed they don't get one?
I think that's like, actually a great point because I've had people tell me they've gone to certain rehabs because they saw them in the news or they saw them and they wanted to go. I'm like, really? Like it was a vacation resort they were going to in the middle of Malibu. And I was like, really? That's how you picked your rehab?
Right. So I do think the size of the pool and the...
I do agree with you. I think people have, you know, but which isn't a bad thing.
You know, it's funny when I was running Wonderland before there was some issues at that rehab, but I was CEO. It was my first CEO position at a rehab. I was doing just mental health before that. And we had 2 pools at that facility. And, you know, we were on VH1. It was a big celebrity rehab. We had, you know, major celebrities there from Hollywood. And nobody ever used the 2 pools. I never ever saw anyone get in the pool. Yeah. Right? Like they were all detoxing and then in group. You know, here we are in Southern California. There's these 2 pools that they come because it's like a luxury rehab.
And nobody uses
them. And nobody ever used them.
Right?
You could have offered a bathrobe with that too.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Now I did have an adolescent that I was working with, him and his family, a few weeks ago, and I suggested an adolescent program out here in Southern California that I really like, and his parents quickly pointed out to me that they did not want him to feel like he was on vacation.
Right.
Like, we don't even want him to go to a nice place.
I think that model actually is getting hit really hard. You know, that was sort of where I started, and we've moved more towards we have a very, very cool environment, but it's definitely not vacation-based, it's treatment-based.
Right.
And I think that's really important. But still people are extremely comfortable. And I believe in like easy detoxes. You know, a lot of people like think you should have hard, tough detoxes. And we're very into making detox as painless as possible and really joining with the clients and getting their trust and letting them see that we can really help them. So...
And by the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. One of the things we're talking about tonight is how do you confront a friend with a drug? How do you confront a friend with a drug problem? I also would love to hear from one of our callers last week, John, who is, you know, is the John test. He decided to tell us if he could
not drink for a week,
not drink and use what was it? It was something else, Percocets or whatever.
I think it was oxycodone.
If he could do that for 1 week and not do it for 1 week, and I'd love to hear from him to see if that test, the John test,
even if he failed, John,
even if he failed, you know, because it's not a fail. You know, here's the thing that people that are out there that are listening don't understand. When alcoholics and drug addicts make promises, when they say them, they actually mean it.
We really believe it.
They really believe it. But the problem is, when you have alcoholism and addiction, those promises don't come through. They don't come true. Yeah. But when they made the promise, they meant it.
Yeah. Well, you know, the mind is really powerful, and denial is an incredibly seductive mechanism that people really don't understand. You know, Freud gave sort of ideas like the concept of denial. You know, people threw it away when they said Freud was, you know, just an antique that nobody should listen to his ideas. But I mean, to deny the defense mechanism of denial, and that people will actually not know something, like that their subconscious represses from their conscious knowledge certain ideas that are painful or harmful. They don't understand that. And you know, and I people always say, oh, you know, well, how could that be? And I go, well, it's sort of like dissociation. Like, you know, do you know what that is? And they're like, no. And I go, well, you ever been driving your car and all of a sudden you got home, you don't know how you got there? Like, you know, you forgot like the half hour you were driving. I go, that's dissociation. You do it. It happens to people. So it's sort of like that. It's a little bit like
blackout.
Yeah, it's a little bit like yeah. Well, but it's a little bit like dissociation and denial. Like your mind temporarily doesn't remember that you weren't going to drink or that you weren't going to use, and you end up using, and then you already had a drink or you've already used, and you're like, oh well, I might as well just continue. And that's where we see people overdosing, where they start using again and they've gotten sober for a while, and then they immediately go back to what they think they can handle once they trip up. And that's one of the big dangers of the relapsing, is that they, you know, then that's where we see that overdoses. And I think we saw it most likely with this
Corey
guy
Monteith.
from Glee, where, you know, he had gotten sober, then he got caught drinking. I think somebody saw him in a bar or something, and then he locked himself in a hotel room and ended up drinking and using heroin.
And you pick up where you left off. And I don't think people understand
and
that
opiates and alcohol, it's the #1 way to overdose. So,
and I, you know, and people, you know, it's this. You go to rehab, you know, your body detoxes for 30 days, 60 days.
Right.
You know, you can't. And somebody was joking, if he never would have gotten sober, he would still be alive. But, you know, miserably. But that picking up where you left off.
That's not necessarily true either.
Right.
I mean, he could easily have overdosed.
Right.
At any time. I mean, anytime you use drugs at that level,
you shoot something in your arm.
I think there's some suicidal element to your behavior. I mean, you're putting your life in the hands of a drug that isn't regulated, isn't dosed properly. You don't know what you're really taking.
But I feel that way even about my drinking.
Yeah, even
you know
drinking,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like there is some level of suicide. Absolutely. Like why am I really doing this to myself on a daily basis to a degree where there's no level of normal in what I was doing?
Not just your mental health, but your physical health.
Physical, for sure, yeah. And to continue to do it every day. And I remember hitting a point myself, looking at alcohol one day, so hungover. I mean, I say hungover, I really was in severe withdrawal, you know, after not having a drink for so many hours, and knowing that the only thing that was going to stop my shaking, or the only thing that was going to allow me to feel okay and kind of get through my night, was to have another drink. And I remember staring at the alcohol and just having like hatred, because it was just one of those moments that I realized it truly controlled me. I didn't control it, but it was the only thing I could do in that moment. You know, I mean, it's just, there's nothing healthy about that.
What happens when you do an intervention and the person doesn't want to go? Is there, you know, what do you try to leave people with, the family members or the person? Is there a message that you try to leave with them that you hope they'll re-engage at some point? Or?
Absolutely, always. You know, I always talk about everything kind of being practice. You know, my addiction was all practice. You know, I had to drink too much to realize what was too much. I had to go to places I didn't like to realize what places I did like. Like, it was all practice to get to the insanity where I ended up. And recovery is the same way. It's all practice. You know, you kind of figure it out and you try it. You see what works. You see what doesn't work. And it's all just a step. You know what I mean? And in that intervention process,
we get that a lot with rehab too.
Like,
people will come in and then they go out and they relapse and they have to come back in, and people are like, "Why would you ever go to the same rehab twice or 3 times?" And it's hard to explain to people the nature of this illness, and that sometimes it takes a few times.
Multiple times, sure.
Before people actually, because they have to go out and test it, and they want to make sure that really they're an addict. And there's a lot of different things. And we try and approach
people
that
really hang on
but
to that. Maybe at some point I'll be able to drink in a controlled manner, you know?
Especially the healthier they get. And when you're an active addict, that's the big thing. Oh, I actually feel good enough today to do drugs.
Right.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. We're talking tonight about confronting loved ones with a drug problem, with an alcohol problem, and how do you do it? It's one of the, quite possibly, even for somebody that's sober, like me, when I have friends that relapse, I don't always know what to do. I don't know how to handle the situation. Because part of me has become, okay, just get your butt to a meeting, get your butt into, but there's such a deeper, that, and Andrew and I were talking about this the other day, that I've been sober almost 15 years, and if you would have said to me this whole thing with what we do at KLEAN, dual diagnosis, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I'd have been like, hogwash. You just stick somebody into a meeting and they'll get sober, and the longer I've stayed sober and the more my experiences have gained, I've realized, when you're 31 years old and you're lodged in a hotel room shooting heroin, that's not just, there's an underlying issue. And until we start dealing with those underlying issues,
there's lots of issues.
There's lots of issues.
Yeah.
There's lots of.
There's the issue of you abusing drugs,
right.
But then there's also all the issues that you've created while you've been abusing drugs,
right.
And then there's all the issues that you have to deal with that made you feel so
that were there before you started using drugs, right?
That made you want to start using to cover up that pain.
And this is a lifelong process. And one of the things I loved about that conversation I had with my friend Lisa, who had celebrated 2 years today, why it was so important was because she had tried this stuff before. She had tried to get sober, but she never caught the buzz. She never caught the fun of what being sober is about. And to the people out there that are listening, I would love to hear your ideas of how sobriety has been fun for you, how it's been rewarding for you, because I do think people need to hear that too sometimes. So I'd love to get that after the break. We are coming up out of a break in a few minutes. But one of the things I want to talk about, I want to hear your stories out there about how sobriety has been fun to you, how it's been rewarding for you. Because people that are using, that are relapsing right now, that are going through a rough time, family members that are watching their friends and your loved ones kill themselves.
We have a great interventionist here.
Yeah, we have an amazing interventionist, Angela Pugh.
Questions if it's something you're interested in.
Who came all the way from Kansas City, somewhere in the middle of Missouri and Kansas. I can't figure it out yet. And
where does she buy gas?
Where does she buy gas?
Missouri.
That is the great question.
There you go. That's the answer.
I guess gas. We learned tonight on KLEAN Radio, gas is cheaper in Missouri. Discussion continues at KLEAN Radio.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits. Now back to Andrew Spanswick and Judah Friedman.
Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. We have a great show going on tonight. We have the amazingly talented interventionist to the people of Kansas City, somewhere, and all across the United States, Angela Pugh.
Hi, everybody.
And we have my handy-dandy co-host with the most, the great Andrew Spanswick.
Yes, and I try to pay more attention to detail.
Yes, Andrew pays attention to the detail, Spanswick. And we have a great show going on tonight. There are so many people out there in America right now that are struggling, and one of the things we're talking about is confronting a friend with a drug problem. And with that, we have an amazing interventionist that actually does that for a living. And I think it is important, and you're one of those people I know that you don't kill people financially. You try to help people with as much help as you could possibly offer them.
No question. And that's kind of something I did from my beginning. I decided that I wanted to be reasonable, first of all. You know what I mean? I'm not, it's really difficult for me to not help somebody when they reach out.
Plus, you
I'm
live
not
in Kansas.
that.
It's cheaper. I'm joking.
Don't let other interventionists hear you say that.
That was what an LA snobby comment.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I could say it.
And you live in the Valley.
Yeah, I do live in the Valley.
Here, wait. I want to clarify.
Live in the 818.
I want to clarify really quickly. Kansas City
Yeah.
and Kansas are two entirely different places.
Yeah, whatever you want to tell yourself. And
wait, Judah, spell Arkansas for me.
And
Never mind.
So one of the things we want to talk about tonight, because I do think, Gandhi had an amazing line. He said, if you're going to take something away from somebody, you have to give them something of equal or greater importance. I can't believe I remembered that, Andrew.
And got it right.
And that's one of the things we try to do at KLEAN. And I think one of the important things is, as you do an intervention, it's not just like we're talking about doom and gloom. You have to give somebody, it doesn't matter. People have this perception, just because you're an addict, I don't have to give you greater hope. Right. It's like, oh, you're an addict, you're screwed, and you better get sober. And the addict says, okay, thank you for the sermon. I'll go and use my drugs. Because they need to see something. An addict, an alcoholic that's in the grips of addiction, or families that are going through it, need to see the hope.
Yeah, no question. I think it's so hard too. I mean, you're talking about something that just affects every single piece of your life and every piece of your behavior and your thinking. And when you're thinking about getting sober, I mean, what a strange place to even be in your own head, to think about making a change of that magnitude. And it's overwhelming, and it's intimidating. How will I do it? What will it be like? I remember I was very fearful that I wouldn't be funny anymore. I was like, what if my sense of humor is really just because I'm drunk? And what if I'm totally lame when I get sober?
Did you ever get it back?
No, it's gone. Gone forever.
But, and we joke and we kid, and people don't realize that, too, is like, as you're getting sober, we learn to look at our stories and have, and we laugh. Yeah. And we joke.
Also, the old saying, what's the loudest table in the restaurant? The sober table.
Sober people, right. Yeah. But I think that's so important, too, in being a part of meetings or something. Whatever your thing is, you have to do a something, because I have to be surrounded by my kind of people. I have to be around other addicted people where I can share my stories and be exactly who I am, and we can all get a good laugh. If I share a lot of my stories with non-addicted people, they want to have me arrested.
Right.
I mean, rightfully so, for that matter. But
if you went to a Disney convention and told your story, people would be like, "I don't get the humor."
Thank God the same thing doesn't apply to hemorrhoids. That'd be a very, very strange group.
And by the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. We get tons of Facebook posts, and we get tons of all these questions on Facebook constantly. So if if you're a little nervous about calling in, we understand. Go to Facebook/KLEAN Radio. Send us your private message.
And don't be nervous about calling in. We're very easygoing, and you can call in. We're not going to know who you are. You can use a fake name if you want, and we're here.
Or use a real name and say it's fake.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
Really throw people off.
I could swear that was Judah.
And so give us a call at 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Actually, when I was drinking, I've told you the story before that I used to call up radio stations in New York so I wouldn't be alone.
Didn't they block you from
They did. They blocked me from all the sports radio stations in New York because when you're drunk calling in, I didn't make a lot of sense, and I said so every number in my parents' house was blocked from calling.
That's why the Mets suck, right?
Yeah, it's all my fault.
That's what happened.
Blame it on me.
But, your advice was so bad.
That's an interesting thing, too, because a lot of people we hear that when they're trying to get sober, it's the funniest thing, Angela. I'm sure you hear this, too. You hear people say, but what am I going to do on my wedding day? How am I going to have a toast? And you say to them, do you even have a girlfriend? And most of them are like, no, but when I get one and I want to get married, that's alcoholic thinking.
Total alcoholic thinking. I heard a girl say the other day, I was getting my son ready. She and her husband are both doctors. She's like, and I'm just looking, I'm thinking, gosh, medical school is going to be so challenging. It's so hard, and he's going to be tired, and he's going to have to study so much. And she goes, and then I had to remind myself he's 5.
Yeah.
Like, right.
And that's
you might not have to worry about that just yet,
And that's the alcoholic addictive mind is, we stop ourselves. It's like, listen, I'll admit I smoke, and one of the things I struggle with is what will I do in the car?
Right.
Not that I smoke in the car.
But
what's one of the things I worry about, and it's thank you, Rand. And that's one of the things I worry about, and that's pure. I'm going to tell you a funny story. I swear to God, this happened. I was on the airplane. I fly somewhere, and I remember I put my knapsack up where the first seat I could find it, right?
Right.
And I'm sitting down, it's like 10 rows behind, and I think to myself, what if the plane crashes? My cigarettes are in my knapsack. and I remember thinking to myself, I got this panic got a hold of me. So, I mean, because I'm thinking I'm going to survive the crash.
And then not be able to smoke.
And not be able to smoke, the horror. And so I went and got
That's how I used to feel at last call.
Right, that's
terror.
That, you know, but I would get nervous at 8 o'clock at night about last call, and the bar closed at 4 in the morning, and I'd be well,
anxiety is very common in addicts. It's most addicts have a lot of anxiety. It's one of the #1 illnesses that leads to addiction. Most people that have been diagnosed with anxiety end up having a problem with at least alcohol, if not other substances. Benzodiazepines is another one that they tend to get hooked on. Often because they're treated with that to begin with,
right?
But anxiety is and it's anticipatory anxiety. Often, it's that anxiety before things happen, right? Like so, you know, oh, I got to get to the bar, or oh, I've got to meet my friends, and they get almost sick feeling,
right.
And then alcohol makes them feel better. And you see that a lot with drinkers, like, you know, they can't, you know, they're waiting to go out and drink, or they're waiting to go, you know, even if they're drinking at home, it's the ritualistic, and that anxiety feeds and makes them drink more because they want to get over that anxiety and feel normal.
You're completely right. That was one of the greatest things about getting sober, was that freedom. You know, I was like, you know, it used to be I would drink and I'd be like, now I could breathe. When I got sober,
a few drinks.
Yeah. But when I got sober, it was the reverse. It was like, I don't have to run to the bar.
Right.
I don't have to live like that, because that was work.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Scheming to drink and scheming to use is one hard job. So, I mean, yeah.
Thinking about it, worrying about it, planning it.
Planning your life, like the things you don't do because you have to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, the amount of time that alcoholics spend on figuring out how to use. I mean, somebody said it to me today. Somebody at the KLEAN said to me today, they go, Judah, I had never had a problem getting money for drugs. Right? They go, all of a sudden I'm sober. And they're working, they have amazing things going on. And, you know, and I was like, because when you're using, it's more than a job. I mean, it's a career.
Yeah, well, you look how much money people spend on drugs and alcohol. It's unbelievable. I mean, alcohol alone, you know, a heavy drinker that's moved up to liquor and can't get drunk off beer anymore, you know, they're spending $20, $30 a day.
At least.
Yeah, at least.
Because I didn't want to be alone, so I would buy everybody else alcohol at the bar, you know, because I just wanted to be liked and I didn't want to be alone.
Cigarettes, I mean, now what are they, $14 a pack in New York?
That's in New York. By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call.
Judy gets them from Yugoslavia.
I do, actually. I have my shipment coming in from, it takes a while. I do ground shipment from Yugoslavia via U-Haul.
Right? And they're waiting by the post box.
That's exactly right. So give us a call.
Anything from Yugoslavia for Judah?
800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. We're in the studio tonight with Angela Pugh, an amazing interventionist. There's so many things going on. You know, overdoses in the U.S. has increased for the 11th consecutive year. And, you know, which goes into line with how do you confront a friend with a drug problem? Because the odds are that most people out there do know somebody that has a drug problem, has a drinking problem.
Beyond odds, we know that everybody knows somebody with a drug problem. It's whether or not they want to accept that somebody has a drug problem or not. And denial is both ways. It's both with the addict and with the people around them. We see that a lot with family members and friends, where they don't really want to deal with the fact that their friend's actually an addict or an alcoholic.
And I think, you know, how many people out there, I'm actually curious about this, so give me an answer to this. It's 800-222-5222. How many of you have gotten into a car with somebody that you knew was drunk and you weren't drinking, but you didn't have enough courage to say, don't drive?
When I was younger, it was all the time, right?
All of my friends are about to call.
Yeah, right. but you know, and
I spent my 20s like this.
But how many people didn't have enough courage to say to you, hey, Angela, you're in no shape to drive?
Well, they were in no shape to drive either.
Right.
So I think at that point it became let her get in trouble.
Yeah, right. Who's going to take the fall?
I think part of that denial, too, though, is just a basic self-preservation in that there's so much confusion, again, around the whole thing, and even with the family members. There's so much confusion that even if we want help, we don't know how to get help. We don't know how to find help. We don't know how to do that. We don't know where to go, who to call. I mean, I get asked all the time, obviously, because I put people in treatment all over the country, and people ask me, where did I go to treatment? I didn't go to treatment. I'm not even sure I knew there was treatment.
Right.
You know, I had no idea. I detoxed on my couch with my Rottweiler. He was very understanding, and you know, and I just went from there. But I
Andrew
didn't even
could
know
relate,
that
oddly enough, but not a Rottweiler. But you know, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, this is all about making it so people can find a solution a lot quicker. You know, one of the things, and I think what you're talking about, Andrew, because I love when you say it, is that we don't try to kill you during detox. One of the things we're trying to say is that this doesn't have to be, we're not punishing you. We're not here to punish the drug addict. We're not here to, you know, punish the alcoholic. This isn't what it's about.
Yeah, it's about reducing pain.
Right.
It's about getting to the point where you don't feel like you have to compulsively try to cover up pain. So, you know, it's about showing people that there's another way to live that's better, and that it's achievable. And we have a great example of that. We have a great alumni group.
Yeah.
You know, we have, you know, tens of people that come every Sunday and to our treatment center, come to a barbecue, hang out, and there's a whole community of people now.
And I get to grill my face every week.
You get to bake yourself in front of a barbecue.
I got to tell you something. It's
You're just our barbecue pit master.
Do you do the barbecue at the Washington location also?
Yes, we do something else.
Okay.
But I want to tell you something.
They have a whole kitchen up there. It's amazing.
When I was getting sober, this guy Roy in New York, who sounded like Harvey Fierstein, he goes, "Judah, what is it that you want out of sobriety?" And I was about to say, like, shoes. Like, really, that was my answer. Or like my own apartment or something. And he goes, "Shut up. You just be cutting yourself short." And if you would have told me 15 years ago I'd get to, you know, barbecue every Sunday night for, like, the coolest bunch of people, it wasn't in my scope of thinking.
Right.
And I think that's the amazing thing about sobriety and life, is that it opens up our world. Let's go to Mark in Tucson. Mark?
Yes.
Welcome
Hi.
to KLEAN Radio, Mark.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys tonight?
Good.
Great.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm driving to the West Coast tonight, and I just picked up your show, and I just have an interesting anonymous, you know, confession, and interested to get your feedback.
Okay.
I'm 44 years old, and I have used amphetamines my entire adult life, and I don't know how common this is, or if you guys hear this kind of thing. You know, it started in late high school, early college, you know, cramming for tests and things like that, so I'm sure it's very common. And it proceeded to in my 30s, and I think I have probably a slight case of ADD, but obviously played it up, you know, to get into medication that, you know, I had used before, buying it from the black, with it being street amphetamine. And then I've used Adderall, you know, from 30s all the way to 44, and that's my age now. And I built a successful distribution business and sold it off and have money in my pocket and I'm able to travel on. And, you know, I've always wondered, what would it be like? What would my life be like without them? But I would also got to say that at times when I was building that business, that particular drug to me became very useful.
Yeah, I think this, I think this is one of the things that is confusing often about addiction, is that there can be some positive aspects to using drugs and alcohol,
or it has worked.
Or and even when you're actually an actual, I mean, there's a type of addict that we call a functioning addict or functioning alcoholic.
That's exactly what my father was too.
Yeah,
I told this guy. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
People that have a propensity to use amphetamines for a long period of time tend to suffer from an underlying psychiatric disorder, because amphetamines actually have a sedating effect on them and makes them calm and more organized. So, and it makes them able to function more clearly. We see that mostly with, and don't be scared by this, but schizophrenia and other thought disorders tend to be people that are affected and that tend to go into using amphetamines. We see that a lot. My key thing is that, you know, dosage, use, proper prescription, proper diagnosis, and, you know, that's something that you should be seeing a physician about. If you've been highly functioning on amphetamines, you know, for a long period of time,
24 years.
Yeah, it's very likely that you do have some sort of underlying disorder that should be examined. The only way you're going to find that out, though, is by what they call baselining you, which means you basically have to stop taking it for at least like 90 days. and then have a psychiatrist really examine your behavior and what's going on, and then see if you can actually get by without amphetamines, and you've just actually created this myth for yourself that you need it, or if in fact you might actually have some sort of underlying psychiatric disorder that can benefit from the use of amphetamines. One thing I have to say is that you're playing with fire. If you're not taking a regulated dose under doctor supervision, there's a lot of pills out there right now that aren't the real thing. We're seeing you could easily slip into using methamphetamine or some other type of
Can I interject?
Sure, yes. Go ahead.
And this was an interesting dynamic. I felt so relieved in my mid-30s when I moved from fine black market amphetamines, which is getting off the...
Mark, you broke up for a second. Mark, you're breaking up.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Telephone.
Hey, Mark,
we're going to put you on hold.
Why don't you just call us back again?
Yeah, call us back when you get a chance. I think what Mark, if you just tuned you are listening to KLEAN Radio and on the phone with us, if you could give us a chance to call, give us a shot to call back. Mark is talking about being on amphetamines for 24 years, and we find that a lot.
They say that just with alcohol and regular drug abuse, generally once you become addicted, it normally takes 7 years for people to reach out and get help.
Right.
So it's a little bit shorter with like methamphetamine, where people bottom out sooner generally. But a lot of these drugs, people can be functional. You can use heroin your whole life and be functional.
And it depends what your idea of functioning is.
Well, it's functioning as a heroin addict, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be creative or you can't. But you're taking huge risks, and that's why I don't like to lie to people. It's like it's the truth of the matter is that this is things that people have done, and there are examples of people that have lived their whole life doing drugs. I mean, like William Burroughs and whatnot.
Well, let's get back to Mark.
Sure.
So Mark, welcome back.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can hear me.
We got you now. We got you.
Oh, you got me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
We're like a Verizon commercial.
Yeah, right. Hear me now.
So go on, Mark.
I guess.
Mark, we're gonna Mark.
No, we got him. We got him.
Okay.
He was talking. Mark, you were talking about being functional and.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to.
No, go drive safely, Mark. Give us a call back next week, Mark. Or go on Facebook and go to Facebook/KLEAN Radio, Mark, and private message us. Because I would love to talk to you more. One of the cool things.
Call us next week. We're on
call us next week. And we're in the studio tonight with an amazing interventionist, Angela Pugh, from Kansas City, borderline Kansas. And one of the things I love about the show and about what we do is we're not here to scream at people. We love the questions. Right. We love somebody calling us up that's been on amphetamines for 24 years and saying, what do I do? Is this, like John from last week?
Or the puzzlement of why did this actually work? Like, why do I not fit, like, these scary stories you're telling me?
I think he's more puzzled than we are.
Yeah, no, he is. And I that's the point that I'm making is that, people that are very high functioning but addicted get to the point where that is their personality and that is what they do, and they don't realize that they're actually a functioning addict, and that they could actually live a healthier and longer life if they could actually become sober.
Right.
And that's, and the question is, why should I when I feel like this is helping me? Or maybe they wrap all their achievements around this drug when it isn't the drug that made them successful. It's their efforts that made them successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I went to college. I never did amphetamines, and I graduated.
Drugs don't, you don't pop a drug and all of a sudden you're creative. You were creative and then you pop the drug.
Well, there are a lot of amphetamine addicts that I've dealt with that were older were people that as you get older, your short-term memory starts to go and you're not quite as quick. And so like a lot of mathematicians tend to misuse amphetamines, but there's only a limited time that it works. Freud did some of his best work when he was shooting cocaine, and then he was didn't do much after that. It's like, so you could say, oh, well, maybe you should have shot cocaine more. But what they don't realize is that he ended up with drug-induced psychosis.
That was
and
not an endorsement, by the way.
Because they don't realize the after.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go way up, you're going to come way down.
Right.
And sometimes you can't come down. That's the other thing.
Well, that's what I love about the people that are recretional ecstasy users. And they're trying to convince me.
Like there's even ecstasy anymore.
Right.
Like,
or whatever they're taking, MDMA, MDNA and all that. Or whatever.
MDMA.
I said it right the first time, MDMA. And and they're trying to convince me that it's not bad for you, and I'm like, anything that takes your brain in one direction.
They all eat health food, but then they
all
smoke
eat health
pot
food at Whole Foods, but have no problem.
It always cracks me up. Oh yeah, it's like I won't eat meat. Oh yeah, but you smoke pot 5 times a day.
But you listen to Mark, the same thing. I mean, the last caller, who's obviously a very bright guy,
right?
But he was getting his amphetamines on the black market. That's what's changed in his story in the last 24 years.
But I love that asking those questions too, though, because I feel like people get caught up in what their idea of being an addict is.
Yep.
And it's not, everybody doesn't look the same. Everybody doesn't do it the same.
Thank you so much for saying that. I say this all the time. Like, people say, oh, it's alcoholism, and that is, like AA tries to label like there's just the alcoholic personality. I said, you know what? I've been doing this for 22 years, and I don't think I've met very many addicts that are exactly the same.
Right,
right. People are really individual.
Oh, I agree. We're unique.
Yeah.
We share a common malady.
Right.
Alcoholics and drug addicts, but we're unique, and I never want to lose that uniqueness.
Yeah,
That's what
I
makes
agree.
us special.
I agree with that too. Yeah.
I mean, if anything, you regain the uniqueness by getting sober.
And Lord knows I regain.
It's like zombie apocalypse of alcoholics and drug addicts lying in bed.
So we're in the studio tonight with an amazing guest, Angela Pugh, who's an interventionist. She runs a company called AP Recovery Resources. AP Recovery.
Wow, Judas screwed up again.
AP Recovery Services.
He was doing so well. He was like 10 for 10.
It's her beauty gets me has knocked me out.
Throws you off. Right.
It's so bad in this studio. When our last studio, we were in a different station, which I won't mention. But Judy used to sit next to the guest across, and if it was a hot chick, he would always slide closer and closer and closer. And now at this studio, he's separated.
Getting me into trouble with my girlfriend who's driving me home.
This is before he had a girlfriend.
The location of where we sit is everything to do with our amazing video
Judas creepy sex addict thing.
You guys are crazy.
That's a whole other show.
A whole other show, right?
And by the way, let me just give a shout out, by the way, to our live stream, because if you're listening out there, you could also see what we look like and see that Angela is brilliant. She helps people. She happens to be attractive. And you can go to... I don't want her to just be... Okay, there's no way I'm going to not get out of this. So you are listening to Clean Radio.
Just give out the number again.
Give us a call, 800-222-5222. That's 800-222-5222. Angela, why don't you tell people how to find you?
You can find me at aprecoveryservices.com. You can find me toll-free if you need, 888-906-9184. You can also find me on Facebook as AP Recovery Services.
And how do most people how do most people find you, and who is finding you? Is it parents? Is it husbands, wives, or is it just everybody?
It's really everybody. It's really everybody. I've been getting a lot of those calls about treatment. Where do we go? I've been getting a lot of people that are ready, willing, they want to do it, and have no idea where to go.
Well, it's so confusing now.
I mean,
the whole industry is such a mixture of different... People don't realize that every rehab is not the same.
Right. And I'm very big about matching the person to a place, too. Like it wouldn't do any good. I always say this, and my friends crack up. But I always say it wouldn't do any good to send somebody like me to an outdoorsy program. You know what I mean?
You're like a rehab matchmaker.
It's just not going to happen. So I'm so big
do trust
about...
falls and,
I'm out. But I would use the pool at the place.
You would have used the pool?
I would have definitely used the pool. But I just think that's so important. It's also important to try to treat the right issue too,
Let's get to a quick call. We got somebody in the Valley. Welcome to Clean Radio.
Hello, welcome to Clean Radio. You there?
The problem with the 818 sometimes is they have bad cell phone service. Give us a call back next week. Unknown in the Valley. I live in the Valley. I love living in the Valley. But Angela, once again, what's your website's name?
aprecoveryservices.com.
And to anybody out there that's struggling, I beg of you to go to Angela. She's one of the things I love about the way you do the way you do your work is you're really involved with the family. When they deal with you, it's not just like, okay, get my kid into rehab and then that's it.
No, I do a lot of work with the family because it doesn't necessarily do any good to send somebody away to get treatment and come back home to exactly the same situation and the same behaviors. Everybody gets really unhealthy when they're touched by addiction. So, everybody needs to kind of have some knowledge and understanding everybody needs to work on their own behaviors and how they've changed as people in those relationships.
And I think it's extremely important. It's one of the things we like to focus on at KLEAN is that we're not just in this for the short term. You know,
Right.
we know addiction is a long-term illness, and we're essentially saying to you, we're in it for the long term.
Yeah. And recovery is long term
Right.
too. I feel like people go away, they think, oh, I'm going to go for 28 days or, 60 days, and then it's going to be perfect and I'm fixed and I come home and go on with life.
Well,
And
that's how it's been shown in every movie about
Right,
addiction
right.
since
And
since
recovery
when a
just
man
doesn't
loves a
work
woman.
that way. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you have to figure it out as you go. Like I said, it's all practice. You figure it out as you go.
What is your favorite movie, by the way, that deals with alcohol and addiction? As we're wrapping up the show, what is it?
Favorite movie that deals with alcohol and addiction.
The most correct, I love The Days of Wine and Roses.
It's not a good one. It's a Requiem for a Dream, but it's more
that's
of
a great
but
one.
that's an
cautionary
amazing,
tale. I like Train Spotting too, I gotta say.
I
Mine's,
liked, what is Rush? Was that what it was called?
I got to
Rush is
tell
pretty
you
good.
something.
That's one of
I
my
love that you
faves.
said that because not enough people have seen. I don't know if anybody has. I mean, that movie, it had Eric Clapton's Tears in Heaven in it. That was with Jason Patric, Jennifer
Yeah.
Jason Leigh, an amazing movie about addiction, about
movie.
how it wasn't started that way. He was trying to do good and got addicted. And I think so many people sometimes try to demonize addicts and alcoholics, not realizing they're some of the purest, nicest people you've ever met.
And that you can fall into a trap of addiction
Right.
like the female character in that movie did.
That's
I mean,
exactly
she-
right. And all of a sudden, this thing hits you. That alcoholism, that addiction thing hits you. So if that's hit you, or it's hit somebody in your family, we're running out of time, but do give us a call, please, at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. It's an
We've had a few
absolute-
drop calls. I think we're having problems.
Yes,
with
we
the
are
phone
having
system
problems
today.
with the phone. So it's just give us a call. It's absolutely free. If you need extra help also, please see Angela Pugh, AP, say it again.
AP Recovery Services.
It just sounds better the way you say it. I mean, you plug yourself a lot
Well,
better.
it's my baby. I hope.
And it's an amazing business you run. Rand, I want to thank you very much for the amazing job you do and your Gestapo
Thank you, Rand.
tactics to how Andrew and I do the radio show.
So wait a minute, I want to get, it's her baby. So if Judah could have given birth, he could have said clean better. Like you could do cleancenter.com.
No, he's lost, Andrew. Let's just-
Cleancenter.com, please. And I want to thank Steve over there. Mark, you do an amazing job answering the calls. I want to thank Patrick. I want to thank everybody out there that's listening. I want to thank everybody on Facebook that pays attention, that posts, that joins the conversation. We love it. The only way we grow is if you contribute to the conversation with us. And Andrew, have great travels this week. You're headed up to our Washington.
I'm going up to the Washington facility. I'll probably try and call in on Sunday.
Well, I'm not sure about
I have
that.
I have a guy in your Washington facility right now, so check
client?
up on him.
Yeah,
okay,
Angela
we'll
actually
talk about
has
it
sent
after
us
the
a
show.
client that's doing amazingly well in our Washington
Yeah,
facility.
the Washington facility is a beautiful place up there.
Yeah.
It's a great time to be up there.
It's a mile marker.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about areas like that. I always wanted to live on a mile marker. But again,
I'll post a picture of a salmon that I catch up there.
to everybody out there that makes the show amazing, I want to thank you. And to the people that help contribute to the show, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you.
And
Angela
thank you
Pugh.
to listeners. It's like
Yeah.
I really love the fact that we got so many fans posting constantly. It's really impressive.
It's really cool. Angela Pugh, your company, one more time.
AP Recovery Services, and thank you so much, you guys, for having me on. I really
Oh, it's our
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Great
Misfortune
opportunity.
Radio is next. The discussion continues at KLEANradio.com.
Are you or someone you care about addicted to drugs or alcohol? Addiction ruins lives and destroys families. Bring an end to the pain and suffering by calling KLEAN Treatment Centers. KLEAN has helped people from around the world break free by not only treating the addiction, but the underlying causes and providing vital aftercare so people can get clean and stay clean with no gimmicks and no false promises. If you need immediate assistance or just have questions, call KLEAN Treatment Centers for guidance. A much better life awaits.